We're assembled here again, and again for political junkies like you'll meet here in a second. This is great whenever we have a provincial election, so thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Harris, and David and I have been here quite a bit doing these shows together. But my guests tonight too are no strangers to the political panels here at Rogers TV. To my right, we have Ruth Lovell-Stanners, who of course is an experienced politician in Owen Sound and surrounding area, mayor of Owen Sound. You've run in a number of elections as well, other elections, and so we've always rely on your knowledge and your insight, and so thank you for joining us again. Welcome, and we'll get some thoughts from Ruth here in a second. To my left, we have Chad Richards, political staffer, still involved in the local politics, and not just local politics, throughout the province, so he'll have some great insights too. And then to my far left, we have Chris Stephen, who has run in the past for the NDP and still stays involved politically, and has some great insights from throughout Bruce Grey, Owen Sound. We'll also be keeping an eye on Huron-Bruce and Simcoe Grey as our neighbouring ridings. Lots can change, lots can stay the same, we'll see. And the polls close in about half an hour. There are some that for different reasons are going to close a bit later throughout the province. We don't always know why. But Simcoe Grey, Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, and Huron-Bruce are on schedule as far as we can tell so far. So about 28 minutes and 7 seconds till they close, so thank you for joining us. We're also going to see some interviews with the local candidates. David Shearman has been getting to know those candidates as we lead up to election night, so we look forward to that. I'm going to start off here as we go around the panel, and Ruth, we can start with you. Maybe tell us one issue that you think had some traction as this election process went on the last little while.
Well, this is maybe fairly personal, but healthcare was a huge issue in our family, our lives, but it seemed to be an issue everywhere. It wasn't just us. So that, to me, was the big issue. Education. Well, you didn't ask for two.
Yeah, one. We've got
Okay.
we've got some time to fill.
My second
but
one.
Of course, you named two big ones that are always there, aren't they? You know, big ticket items, big budgets, healthcare and education. So we'll certainly maybe see what effect those had on the election once results start to roll in. Chad, we'll go to you next. Maybe something that you saw, whether it was healthcare or something else that you saw some momentum building as this being a big issue in this election.
Yeah, absolutely. I think generally affordability, whether that's transportation from the price of gas, housing affordability and affordable housing, whether it's everything from building new units to helping young people buy their first home. I think just across the board, affordability was a top of mind issue for many Ontarians in this election. Yeah,
right on. And as you said, gas prices continue to hover around $2 a liter, hopefully staying down to that. Anyway, and Chris, maybe your thoughts. What did you see coming out, as you talked to, your friends and people around the community? What were they concerned about?
From a unionist standpoint, because I am vice chair of the OMEC committee for QP Ontario, which represents all the municipal workers across Ontario, the word privatization and that coming up quite often is something that's of concern on municipal workers and municipal employees' minds. Of course, they're public workers. They don't want to see things get privatized. They want to see their jobs stay safe. So privatization for across Ontario from the members that I've heard from is a huge one. Which
could play into, Ruth, of course, what you talked about as far as healthcare and education.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that has come up in the past. So we'll get more thoughts from our panelists as we go on tonight. Lots to discuss, certainly. And again, when the polls close, we'll start to see some results come in pretty fast and furious with some electronic voting and tabulation and things that will happen faster than in past elections. But David, we'll go back over to you and we'll see if maybe you have a candidate you can introduce us to, as you've been having a lot of conversations in the lead up to the election.
Well, before we get into the candidate interviews, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. We've received word from Elections Ontario that a number of ridings will be having late poll closings. We don't know the reasons. Presumably they were not able to open on time. But there are polls in Algoma Manitoulin, for example. Flamborough Glanbrook is another one. And the one that will be really interesting is Parry Sound Muskoka. Now, what that means for us and for all the media coverage is we can't mention any results from any of the ridings that have late poll closings. So if we're not mentioning your favorite riding or you don't see it anywhere in the media, that's why. So that's just a thing to keep in mind as you watch your election results. But let's go to our first interview. We've had a number of the candidates who stopped in to say hello, and we had a brief interview with a number of them. So let's start with our first candidate. Let's go to Karen Geventer. Hi, and welcome to Rogers TV Ontario Election 2022 coverage. I'm David Shearman, and with me is Karen Geventer, who is the NDP candidate for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound. Karen, welcome. Good to have you back.
Thank you very much.
Now, we're just at the end of the campaign. We're all waiting with bated breath for the final results. How's the campaign been for you?
It's been really good. I've had a great team to work with, and yeah, we've done a good job of getting the message out there.
Well, as I was saying to one of the other candidates, it almost seems as if I have been accompanied on my drives around Grey Bruce by election signs. And there were orange, there were green, there were red, there were blue, there were purple, there were yellow. So it's almost as if you're, dare I say it, a household name.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, and I had a really good sign team, got the signs out there.
Certainly,
well.
Yeah. How did you did door to door?
Yes.
How was your reception at the door?
It was pretty good. The main thing was that there was a lot more undecideds than when I've run in the past, later on in the campaign than other years.
Right.
So that was the difference.
That's an interesting observation, because that's not one I've heard before in sort of keeping what, in listening to what's going on. There was a heavier turnout in the advanced poll, which kind of means people had made up their mind. But did you find that people were undecided still when you went to the door?
Yes, there definitely were a number of undecided, and I believe that they were people that were going to still vote, not the non-voters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll certainly watch for the turnout. That's for sure, because that's one of the ways that we can always determine, people's interest in the election. There's been some speculation or comment at the total provincial level that this was a dull and boring election. Did you find it dull and boring?
I didn't find it dull and boring. It did seem that there was not as much engagement with the public as in other elections.
But the issues kind of kept you moving.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Sure.
definitely. People were quite concerned about the issues. Affordability was a really big one. And of course, healthcare and the climate emergency were on top of people's minds.
Yeah, those seem to be three common themes I've heard from the candidates, but also from people who on the street. People are worried about these kinds of things.
Yes.
And we'll just have to wait and see, I guess, with what's going to follow up.
Absolutely.
And it won't be too long. But of course, you're a seasoned veteran. This is not your first electoral rodeo.
No, I've run a few times.
Well, it should be very interesting. Now, where will you be receiving the results? In your headquarters?
At the campaign headquarters, yes.
Like, where's that?
It's 747 2nd Avenue East in Owen Sound.
Right across from City Hall.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Actually, there's a number of party candidates, different candidates right in that area. Maybe there'll be a street party or something. Who knows?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, we'll just wait and see. Well, Karen, thank you so much for stopping in and sharing your thoughts with us, and best wishes on the results. And who knows, we may be talking to you again.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to Karen Geventer for coming in and spending that time with David. She's always generous with her time, as the candidates are. And she said a couple of interesting things in there. The one is that she encountered a number of undecided voters at the door, which is maybe then, I don't know if that's contradictory to the fact that there were about 300,000 more people voted in advanced polls than in the last election. Chris, maybe we could start with you. You could comment on both those things, or one, it's kind of a mixed question. I put you in a tough spot, but maybe that idea of why there might be more undecided voters as we get closer to election, but also why so many people are taking that opportunity to vote ahead of the actual election day.
Both are good questions. To the undecided part of it, I think that we're in a more volatile political climate than we've been in the past. We've got more division all around. But some people, I think, are not sure which way they really fall on a lot of those issues, what they would actually like to see. I think some people would like to see more social services, but what's that going to cost us? Like, what's the fiscal responsibility of it? As far as the increase in advance polls, I was talking to somebody actually today. They stopped and talked to me while I was at work, and they just said they were glad they voted in advance. There was a lineup actually outside the arena for voting in Chesley, and they said the hustle and bustle of trying to vote on the actual day is off-putting, so they're glad that there's more advance polls. Gives them the chance. Usually, like when I went to the advance poll, there was literally, I was the only one in the building.
Right.
So you get to go in and go out at your leisure. You're not in a line. You vote. It's quick, simple, and easy. You're in and out in 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it's that fast, and I think more people are enjoying the leisure part of it rather than the hustle and bustle of standing in lines.
Yeah. Yeah, and Chad, we'll get your comment on the same couple of questions there.
Yeah, sure. With respect to why there may be more undecided voters, I think you can't blame people for being confused about the issues right now. We just went through 2 of the most confusing years I think any of us will ever live through.
Yeah,
so
I hope.
I hope so too. So with respect to the issues themselves, you know, we heard, the 3 of us talked about completely different issues that were forefront on our minds in this election. Everything from affordability to healthcare and privatization issues. As well, you heard Ms. Gementner talk about the climate emergency. That's something. And there's all of these issues that are kind of compounding the choice that people have to make. So, going through the past 2 years has fundamentally changed the way a lot of people think. So, I think that may be contributing to the fact that there's more undecided voters out there. And with respect to more people voting at advance polls, my hope is that it's indicative of more people voting in general.
Yes.
That's my true hope, is
right.
that just means more people are going to go to the polls in general. I think Chris is absolutely right. The hustle and bustle of everyday life, trying to get kids fed and off to hockey practice, soccer practice, all that stuff is complicated when you have to mix in standing in a line for 45 minutes or an hour. So getting it done at advance polls makes sense. But my hope is that it just means more people are getting out.
And that is an issue that we talk about, and I'm sure we'll revisit it later, that idea of voter turnout, right? Yeah. So we sometimes we don't know those numbers till the next day, but certainly that's a big issue every election, the voter turnout. And Ruth, again, comment on those same things. Like, what is it that maybe has so many voters confused this time or not as sure? And why are they getting out and voting in those advanced polls?
I just think it's really hard. We try to figure out what is best for me, and to go through all that's on that buffet of political promises to work out which party reflects best my values and at the same time is fiscally responsible. And when those numbers are thrown out at us, they're somewhat confusing a lot of the time. And so it does take a while to sift through everything that is presented to us as voters. And I don't think, there are people definitely who will be voting for the same party no matter what. And those people don't have the same problem as what we have at this table when we try to sort through the personalities and the policy.
Yeah. Well, and you said sort through. All the time we are, have more, I guess, opportunity for information, whether you want to call it that,
True.
right? But,
yes.
I wonder if part of that confusion can come from so many different sources where the information is coming from and what is legitimate, what isn't, all that type of thing
really
as well.
good point.
And again, maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that again later. We're going to go back to David. We'll meet one of our other candidates, and after that, we'll keep this conversation going. David?
Thank you, Michael. It's been very interesting to watch the build-up to the election. There are certain ridings that I would invite you to keep in your keep an eye out for. And I've the ones that I'll throw out to you immediately are: let's keep an eye on Guelph, where Mike Schreiner is running as the leader of the Green Party. Etobicoke North, where Doug Ford is running. And if that doesn't result in a shoe-in, it means we're going to have a very interesting evening and maybe a long evening. But also the other one to watch is Hamilton Centre, where the NDP leader, Andrea Horwath, is running. And there's been some questions raised about whether this will be her last election. We'll have to wait and see. She's not tipping her hand at all. And so we'll just have to wait and see how she does there. And the final one, and this is where really it could be a toss-up, is Vaughan Woodridge, where Stephen Del Duca is running. And even he is suggesting that, well, maybe not, or maybe we'll see. He's certainly today when he was interviewed, he was quite matter of fact about his chances. So keep an eye on Guelph, Etobicoke North, Hamilton Centre, and Vaughan Woodridge, and just to see how the leaders themselves are doing. Actually, we're going to go now to another candidate interview. We're going to go to listen to Joseph Westover, who was representing the Populist Party, or the PPO, here in Bruce Grey Owen Sound. So, Joseph Westover.
Joseph Westover of the Populist Party of Ontario for Bruce Grey Owen Sound. So, Joseph, thanks for coming in. How do you feel the campaign went for you over the past few weeks?
Well, we started a little bit behind, so it was a little bit rushed, but I think it went pretty good, and I think Owen Sound's got a fairly good setup as far as having the all candidates meeting pretty public and recording it as well and posting it online. So I think that's pretty good. I think it would be nicer if we could get down to Mount Forest more, though. I think with maybe an all candidates meeting or something like that, right? Just spread it a bit more. It would be a little more fun, I think. I think also one other thing I'd like to say is I think lots of questions were missed, right? Because there's so little time, in 2 hours. I think there's lots more issues that should have been addressed to all of us, and we should have had more questioning for sure.
So as you were out in the community, what were the key issues that you saw people bring up to you?
How we're going to get Canada back. They think that the four main parties have taken us in places we don't want to go, and they're not representing Canada at all. They're not representing Ontario. They're just representing globalist agendas, climate crisis agendas, which come from globalist agendas, money in their own pockets, really false promises all the time, that type of thing. They just don't, they're not trusting those parties anymore. So that's why we got the new ones.
So would you consider that was the main issue that struck home to you during the campaign as you went door to door with people?
Well, I actually hit the farming community a lot more than I did in town. So when I spoke to the farming community, it was more about lowering the cost of living. It's not about raising raising your ability to make more money. It's not about bringing that up, because that's not going to help anything. It's just going to cost more money for everybody else to buy everything, which is not going to help us at all. So what it really was bringing the cost of everything down, which I think our party has a lot of solutions for that.
And how were people, when you were talking to people out in the community, how were people in
Oh, honestly, very receptive. They're thanking me for running. They are glad for the option.
And so as we're into the election night now, were you this evening watching the results come in with family and so on, or?
Probably in Barrie. I've got a couple appointments there tonight, so I'll be just probably on the road. We'll see how it comes. I'm sure my family will be watching though, and I'll get a call.
Right, and thanks for coming in, Joseph, and best wishes to you in the election.
Thanks very much.
Hi, and welcome back to our coverage of Rogers TV Grey County Ontario election 2022. We've got about 10 minutes till the polls close, so things are beginning to pick up a little bit in excitement. I just wanted to share with you just some observations about the current standings in the House locally. As you're well aware, Bruce Grey Owen Sound was represented by Bill Walker, and Bill chose not to run again. So, but he has won the last series of elections with between 47 and 52% of the popular vote. In Simcoe Grey, Jim Wilson was the MPP, and Jim chose not to run, and then Jim decided that he was going to sit as an independent. He left the party caucus and sat as an independent, and so the race in Simcoe Grey is wide open. We will watch that one with great interest. Although it's been a solid PC seat for the last series of elections with between 47 and 55% of the popular vote. Huron Bruce, Lisa Thompson is the incumbent member, and she is running again. She has held the riding since 2011. But what's really interesting in all of those three ridings is the number of candidates. If you're a regular viewer, you'll know we have 9 candidates in Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Simcoe Grey has 7. Huron Bruce has 8. And if you look back at the various voting records or the election results, you'll notice that over the last 20 years, the number of parties, the number of candidates has increased. In fact, if you go back 20 years, you'll discover it's doubled. And I wonder if our panel could comment a bit on that, if the impact of the increasing number of parties. Michael?
Yeah, thank you, David, and thank you, the Populist Party candidate, for joining us and giving us his thoughts there. It is an interesting question. Of course, we get to these conversations off air and before we get started. Why do you think, and we can start maybe, Chad, with you on this one, why do you think we see so many parties popping up and well, again, the Populist Party of Ontario, kind of a new one. Why do we see these different groups popping up and wanting to run in these elections? What causes that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we're living in a very polarized environment right now. There's the level of polarization that's taking place between amongst the population is really just quite incredible. I think the interesting thing about the range of parties that are popping up, there seems to be a large concentration on what you would call the right side of the political spectrum, where you have parties like the Ontario Party, the New Blue Party, the Populist Party of Ontario. That sort of fracture on the right side of the political spectrum seems to be driving a lot of those options being created for individuals. Now, whether or not that will culminate in individuals being drawn to cast their ballot for those parties is another story, which we'll find out later tonight, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We won't know the effect, Ruth, of these 9 candidates, these other parties. We won't know the impact until after 9 o'clock. But what does that tell you about the political landscape of Ontario when we see so many different people putting their names forward? Because you've been a candidate, whether you think you have a shot to win or not, it's a lot of work and a lot of time. So what drives someone, maybe to put their name in the hat for one of these lesser known groups?
I think they believe so strongly in what their party or their person, in some cases with an independent, believes in, that they're willing to do it. And I think I spoke earlier about the political buffet of what's put in front of us as voters. And I think sometimes it's just too much. And people want it distilled into, I'm an anti-vaxxer and a few other things, and that's it. And that appeals on a certain level, that simplicity and that directness is enough to sway some voters. And it makes the decision, if you feel very strongly that way, I guess, fairly simple. But we are polarized. Yeah. And this is a reflection of what's happening.
Yeah, and Chris, we'll get your thoughts on that too, and that idea that if you're one of these sort of new parties or that doesn't run everywhere, maybe it is, not they're simple people, but that they can drive a simple message instead of having to try and cater to the masses. Do you think that's what is appealing to some folks?
Yeah, the message is important for those parties. They are very to the point. Like, this is what we believe in. I went online and I read them. They are very much, this is how we believe, this is what we believe in. It's a very basic message so that their population or their voters will understand it, and it could drive some votes their way. I think the impact that we will see will be tonight. Like Chad said, it's definitely on the right side of the spectrum. I've read a lot of tweets, a lot of Facebook political groups and stuff like that, where the left, the NDP, the Liberals are excited about the possibility of finally splitting up the Conservative vote a little bit to help them maybe gain some seats. We'll see if that is actual fact, or if people are happy the way it goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, right? And lots of times the new candidates have that single message that they want to get across, whatever that might be, and sometimes even independence, right? Whether it be just one single issue. And David mentioned in 2 of the ridings that we'll be watching closely, there is no incumbent candidate, and that that can open things up to, and we'll get to that as we see the results. But we'll go back to David Shearman again, and he'll introduce us to one of our other candidates here in Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Thank you, Michael. I had the pleasure of interviewing Danielle Velket, who is the representative of the Green Party here in Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, and here's what she had to say. I'm glad to welcome Danielle Velket, who is the Green Party candidate for this provincial election, and I am sure that she is worn out, tired. No, you're not, are you, Danielle?
No, not right now. Right now, I'm all fired up.
I'm sure. I'm sure. It's been a very interesting campaign from the Green Party's perspective. It looks like one with the leader Mike Schreiner, but possibly a second riding, and who knows how many more.
That's right. We're really hopeful for Matt Richter in Muskoka Parry Sound. Matt has been on the shadow cabinet as the education critic for a long time and has been involved in the GPO for a long time. Is just an all around a good human being, and will make a great MPP alongside Mike.
That's great. That's great. Well, and how's your campaign been now that you're at the end?
Yeah, it's the final stretch. So we were out waving signs this morning and getting lots of honks and recognitions from people on their morning commutes. And after this conversation, I'm out to the one light in Flesherton where we will be doing the same thing. But this campaign has been a trip. There's been, we've had more volunteers, we've had lots of money coming in. So it's definitely, it's nice to see the green reception within Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
So that gives you some encouragement for the next go round? Absolutely.
I think there's, politics is there's the long game. And I think that, I think that there is the possibility for a green, in particular provincial government within Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, and I think we've woken up some people out there to the possibility.
Yes. What was the issue that really struck you or resonated with voters for you?
So, we talked a lot about cost of living, and certainly house pricing was one that I knew we would be talking a lot about and have been talking a lot about municipally as well. But I think the one that really resonated with me and kept me up at night was ODSP. And I was really proud to see how the green policy pushed other parties to look at the issue. So, we had the NDP look to double OSDP rates. The Liberals increased as well as the PCs. So I was really proud of that. I think it's evidence of sort of the oversized impact that Greens have.
It's interesting. Yes, that was a very interesting issue because the Green Party said, "Hey, just a minute," and all of a sudden, boom, 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 everybody lined up within about 12 hours.
That's right.
Well, it's certainly been an exciting thing to watch. Have you found that people, aside from the horn honking and so on, how have people been at the door?
People have been fantastic at the door. We did a lot of calling as well this time around. I think a lot of people were set up and comfortable with making phone calls from their computers through something similar to Zoom, but knocking on the door as well. And it's people are always happy when a candidate shows up or somebody representing a candidate, so that just so really they can be heard. And I think that's what we did at the doors.
Sure. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on, Danielle, but both when you've got your municipal hat on, but we shall see what happens going forward. The results aren't in yet, obviously, but best wishes to you, and perhaps our paths will cross again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I'm sure we will speak, and with who knows what hat I will have on.
All right. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Danielle Velquette, who's the candidate for the Green Party here in Bruce Grey Owen Sound. And now we'll go back to the rest of our show. Welcome back to Rogers TV, Ontario 2022 election. I'm David Shearman, and we're going to start seeing the results now. The polls have officially closed, except in areas where polling has been extended, and those will be pretty obvious fairly soon. But for the most part, the largest number of ridings will begin to report. And we'll be with you. We'll be telling you what to see in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, in Simcoe Grey, and in Huron-Bruce, the three ridings that we are following very, very closely. So I'll pass it over to our panel for their further insights and comments into how things are, how they think things are going. Michael.
Yeah, thank you, David, and thank you, Danielle, for that interview, getting to know our candidates. And the candidates, let's talk about them for a second. The polls have closed. Nothing can change now. People have cast their votes. So nervousness setting in, well, I'm sure it's been there for a little while. But Chris, let's start with you. You have been a candidate. You know what it takes. Talk about the courage it takes to put your name on the ballot and to say, yes, I'm going to speak about what I believe in. I'm going to try and earn your vote. Just, what is that process like for someone to make that decision and then go through with it?
To make that decision, honestly, is very scary. It's one of the scariest decisions you'll ever make in your life because, number one, if you're a little bit introverted, you've got to get out and talk to people. You've got to develop that ability to have a rapport and have a conversation and answer tough questions even, because people aren't always going to be happy to see you. Like, if you're NDP, you're going to have a hard time at a conservative door. If you're a conservative, you're going to have a hard time. Like, it takes a lot of courage. And then you've got the public speaking aspect. When you go to all candidates, you've got to put yourself on a stage, bright lights, everybody focused on you. It's extremely scary. It's extremely intimidating. And political ideologies aside, from all of these 9 candidates, wherever I fall, it doesn't matter. Congratulations to them all. You've had the courage. You've done your best. Good on you. Be proud of yourselves tonight.
Yeah, and Chad, we'll go to you next. So you have worked for politicians, but you also ran for the Conservative nomination. So you've been on that side of it as well. Just like, what's your experience in that realm of, what does it take for a person to say, yeah, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to echo Chris off the start, kudos to every single individual that put their name on the ballot. It is a very difficult thing to do, to have your name stand for any form of public office. It's oftentimes a decision that doesn't just affect yourself, it affects your family. Your family gets put front and center. There's an extra magnifying glass on everything that you and your family do. And it is really a difficult thing to do, but I think that everyone does it out of from a good place, wanting to make change and really bring a positive perspective to the electoral process. So again, just kudos to everybody who's done that. And then on the staffing side, being kind of the right-hand person to a number of candidates, there's also a significant amount of pressure you spend. So to everybody who worked behind the scenes on these campaigns, kudos to you, because I know there's a lot of sleepless nights, there's a lot of sore legs from pounding pavement and knocking on doors, and for this election was a month long, so for an entire month, it consumes every single thought you have. So it really is an all-consuming process, and just everyone who takes part in it, it's an integral part of our democratic process, and kudos to all those who've done that.
Well, and you mentioned, like, from that staff standpoint, you put so much work in so that someone you believe in can hopefully be successful. So that's an interesting mindset too, Chad, to go through that and the aches and pains of a campaign, and in some cases come out on the right side, in some cases not.
Absolutely, and I think that's it. Most people don't do it for the glory and the fame. It's because they're doing it because it's something they believe in, and for staff, someone they believe in. So.
Yeah. And Ruth, you of course have served as an Owen Sound City Councillor. You're mayor of Owen Sound. You have run in a provincial election, and so you've put your name forward a number of times as well. maybe take us through, what went through your head to put yourself through that kind of, I guess we'll say abuse. That's not the very glamorous term, but you've done it numerous times, so you're a great person to speak on it.
I will say this, that it is far more difficult, in my opinion, to run as a provincial candidate than as a local municipal candidate. That is a totally different experience, as you know, Chris. Our riding is the size of Prince Edward Island. Yeah. That hits you the day after you get the nomination, right?
Schedule a meeting in Tobermory.
Exactly. Physically, it's a lot easier to run for a municipal council because you're all in one spot. So that is a huge thing. And then there is the contradiction in people's minds about what issues belong where. The time I ran in the provincial election, I can't tell you the number of times I heard about gun control,
right,
which is totally a federal issue. And eventually, I got to the point where I couldn't argue it anymore because it was just implanted. People believed that gun control was a provincial issue. And you also, it's much harder at the doors, much harder. I think in Owen Sound, people will be very kind. That's because they are. And they know you, and you probably know them. So it's a simpler way to run an election. But to all those candidates in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, congratulations, kudos to even put your name forward and to take all that comes with the gig, as they say. Yeah.
And so hopefully now all 9 of them in Bruce Grey Owen Sound and all the candidates throughout the province can hopefully put their feet up and I'm sure be proud of the work they put in. You can see on your screen, folks, that obviously this is really early. Right now the NDP and PC both leading in 3 and the Greens in 1. Again, that could change. 124 ridings throughout the province. David, we'll maybe come back to you, and you can, if you're seeing anything interesting going on right now or something. So we'll throw it back to you, David.
Well, I just noticed that Mike Schreiner is well ahead with only 1 poll reporting. Is well ahead in the riding of Guelph. It's we're very, very early on, although I must caution you that with the electronic voting and electronic tabulating of votes, things are going to move really, really quickly. We're watching 2 separate networks here, and they all have different numbers. CTV shows 3 for the PC, 10 for the PC, 4 for the NDP, 16 now. I mean, in 10 seconds. We haven't seen any local results yet, although it's Huron-Bruce is coming up. Peterborough Kawartha, one of the bellwether ridings to watch. It looks like a neck and neck with early results. John Jakubuski, who is the incumbent PC, and Renfrew Pembroke is leading. It's a really interesting thing to watch. But even as I'm speaking now, PCs are elected and are leading in 18, NDP in 4, Liberals 2, Green 1. And it's just going to keep on moving. Now, I should also add that the results will be delayed in 19 ridings. And that's a pretty significant number. So it may be a longer night than we might expect. We're now up to the PCs elected and leading in 16, NDP 4, Liberals 2, Green 1. So we'll wait and see. And it looks like early results from Vaughan Woodbridge suggests that Michael Tiabolo is out ahead of Stephen Del Duca. So all kinds of things are moving and moving fast. And just while we're waiting to see what happens, let's watch an interview with the Liberal candidate, Selwyn Hicks.
Is the Liberal candidate for Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Welcome. Good to see you this evening, Buck.
Thank you for having me here, David. It's an exciting night, isn't it?
Yeah. Now I see you've already got the balloons up.
Oh, yeah. I'm optimistic.
Well, it's been a very interesting race because going by the signs, just the election signs, I've been accompanied on all my journeys across Grey Bruce since the election started by all of the candidates. They're all out there. They've all got their signs up. And having interviewed them, it's almost as if, oh yeah, I know who that stands for. I know what they're saying. And although I hear that you have painted Hanover red, is that right?
Well, Hanover does look pretty red, and you have to give it to me in Hanover because, people here know me. They've been electing me since 2006. So I'm a known entity here.
For sure, for sure. Now, what have you discovered when you were on the hustings? I presume you did some door-to-door knocking?
Oh, yeah, quite a bit, in fact. I got to tell you, at the beginning of the campaign, it was a little lackluster. It was almost like people seemed disengaged. Oh, there's an election? Okay, well, I'll have to look into it kind of thing. And as things went on, you could feel that people were becoming more engaged. But frankly, with 9 candidates in the race, they were somewhat confused about, how much research they had to do and trying to figure out who's who and what they stand for. And in the last few days, which I have to tell you, I spent in Hanover, some of the Hanover people were beginning to feel almost neglected because I had been everywhere else. But the last few days in Hanover was a real lift for me because it said, holy cow, I'm with my people and they're all with me. So that was a good thing.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because, looking at the numbers, this has been this Bruce Grey Owen Sound has been about as blue as it can be for many, many years. And, you hope you will break the cycle?
Well, I got to tell you, David, if I listen to the polls and if I listen to the attitudes, everybody said at the beginning of this is a very blue area. You could put a blue jacket on a goat and the goat would stand a pretty good chance of getting elected. So I should have quit from the very beginning, I suppose. But I kept plugging right on through. I've had great reception at the doors. I wish I had another 30 to 60 days, to be honest, because more and more I could feel the momentum building as I'm able to meet with people. I'm able to break through that sort of generational voting. I've always voted Conservative. If I'm able to chat with you at the door, we were able to, make some progress. Anyways, we've done everything we possibly can. I live with no regrets because we've knocked on all the doors. I got to tell you, last night when I finished campaigning, one of my volunteers said, I think we should stop now. The last few doors have all had pajamas on. So that was the sign. That was the sign. Okay, but I was just feeling the love and I just wanted to keep going. Anyway.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see the result, which will be coming shortly. And should you be successful, we'll talk again. And of course, you'll be continuing your role as. Should you not be successful, you'll be continuing your role as a municipal politician. And hey, people will get a chance to see you then.
Exactly. So I'm hoping for a win, but if not, you'll see more of me. And David, it's going to be an exciting night. I'm so, pins and needles. We'll see how things turn out.
And thank you, Selwyn Hicks, for taking the time to sit with David. It's always interesting to hear the candidates one-on-one. And of course, Selwyn Hicks is no stranger to the political landscape of Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Running in many elections. He said he's been elected in Hanover Municipal Council, I think, since 2006. So he's a well-known entity. And maybe we'll get into right now this idea that in Bruce Grey Owen Sound and in Simcoe Grey, there is no incumbent. So Ruth, what does that mean for the candidates that are running? Does that change the election, I guess, or change the process, I should say?
I think it does. I think it's an advantage to anyone who wants to enter the race that isn't part of the party that has been in control. So it opens it up a bit, I believe. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, Chris, what do you think someone like Selwyn Hicks and Danielle Valaket and Karen Gventer, what do you think they're thinking in a riding when they know Bill Walker, and we'll get to him in a second, when Bill Walker declares he's not running? What does that do to a candidate when there's no incumbent running?
It gives some form of encouragement. Like there's maybe an opportunity here to change the narrative or change the story in our area. There's maybe an opportunity for me here with no incumbent. Like Selwyn just said there, you can put a coat on a blue coat on a goat. That's the way this riding is known. But, you know, when you're deciding that, hey, I'm going to run, this looks like your opportunity. Like, there's no incumbent. Maybe I can sneak in there and steal some votes and get in. So just time to go. Let's roll.
Yeah, and Chad, you can comment on the same thing, and maybe also add in for Rick Byers locally. He's the incumbent party, but not the incumbent candidate, and how that would maybe change his approach during a campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as both Ruth and Chris mentioned, I think it opens a window of opportunity potentially. You eliminate that incumbent advantage, and for the individual running in place of the incumbent, so for Rick in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, I think it becomes, you know, basically motivation to get out there in front of as many people as you can. You have to make yourself known, make yourself present at as many doors as possible. And by all accounts, Rick was out there nearly every day, pounding pavement, knocking on doors. And I think that has to be the mindset when you don't have that incumbent advantage and that inherent name recognition that comes with it. And if I can just take 2 seconds as a former employee of Mr. Walker's,
and I wanted to get to, and we'll give everybody a chance. We'll start with you, Chad. I wanted to get to that. Was Mr. Walker elected first 2011, I believe, right? So it took over for Bill Murdoch, of course. But he's had his own long run. So, yeah, Chad, give us what it's like maybe to work for him, what his legacy might be, and things that people should be thinking of Bill Walker as he retires from provincial politics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bill can you know, raise his head high and be proud of the job that he did here in the riding for many years. Down at Queen's Park, he's known as and around the region, he's known as Energizer Billy, because of just the sheer energy that he brings to the job. I worked in Bill's office at Queen's Park when he was the Associate Minister of Energy in the Energy Minister's office, and you know, the days that guy logged were just incredible. Like sun up to sundown, go, and really a true riding MPP as well as a cabinet minister. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. So kudos to Bill for a really great career.
And Chris, we'll get you to comment too. I'm sure you've worked with Bill in the past in your many roles with, you know, union leadership and things of that nature. And what do you think, sort of, I'll say, the career of Bill Walker might be remembered for, or what do we say to him as an outgoing politician?
Well, the thing I'll remember Bill for the most was when he stormed out of the legislature over what was going on with education at that time. Liberals were in control. He made a very big stand, and he made it very, very public, and it made the news. And, you know, good on him for standing up for our kids that time. And, you know, not many people go out with a lasting legacy of something like that, but he definitely goes out with somebody who, you know, that one time you know, he stood there and he was like, nope, we're not going to take this. And yeah, he had to get escorted out. So I think that's a memorable moment, and not many people can go out with memorable moments. Yeah.
And Ruth, maybe a final word on Bill Walker to you. He's been in for 11 years and had, you know, that's a pretty good run as an MPP. So what are your thoughts as he's retiring?
Such a hard worker. He was such a hard worker. You talk about him at Queen's Park, but I think of him around the riding, and he didn't shirk any of his responsibilities that I can see. He was always there, no matter what you were involved in. He was there. I'm sure he's looking forward to having a bit of a life at home now.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the things in my involvement in politics over the years, from a rural candidate, or a rural representative, is how many obligations you have just physically to be places. And, and I think that's different to an urban MPP. It's a much more personal connection when you're a rural member of parliament or provincial parliament. And Bill certainly, he thrived in that area. And so you see more results coming in. We'll go over to David Shearman here, and he can run over what he's seeing, what's going on, and then when we get back, we'll talk about some of the things that are going on ourselves. So David, over to you.
Well, what I'm seeing, Michael, is an awful lot of blue. I can say now that Lisa Thompson has been elected in Huron-Bruce. Sylvia Jones has been elected Brian Saunderson has been elected in Simcoe Grey. Dufferin Caledon, Sylvia Jones has been elected. And these are with very small numbers of polls being coming in, but at the same time, the votes appears to be overwhelming so far. We are still waiting on some results from Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, but it appears that Rick Byers is well out in front of other candidates, but I'm quite sure that there's a very small number of polls, only 5 polls out of 97 are reported, where some of the other ridings have had much larger returns to give some context. But it does appear that in the elected and leading, that the PCs are well ahead and are headed towards a majority government again. But the night is still young, and we'll just wait and see. So I guess we'll just have to watch and see what's going on. Now, we've got another candidate interview at this point. We've got Rick Byers. So if we can hear some words from Rick as he was interviewed today.
Well, it's been a real special team that we've had, and we, every element has been terrific, from the signs all the way up to Tobermory down to Dundalk and Hanover, painting the riding blue, or a canvas team that went to all the communities, over 8,000 doors knocked, which is fantastic. Or the office we had in Heritage Mall, it was all great. We had a dedicated team of great volunteers, and I'll never ever forget all their terrific effort on behalf of the campaign.
So on the campaign trail, what were some of the issues that kept coming up as you visited people?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a great privilege to be knocking on people's doors. And especially for me as a candidate, that's the most important thing I can do. And so it was a great pleasure to introduce myself, because I was a new name for people. But I would say there are 3 categories of issues that were raised. Number 1, of course, is costs, whether it's gas or groceries or housing. Inflation is a big issue that's come up in the last while, and so that was certainly on people's mind. I would say number 2 is healthcare staffing, call it, whether it's a need for a doctor or support for nurses or PSWs or the general healthcare system. That was questions that people had. And I would say 3, I also had meetings with business owners and a number of farm operators, both big and small. And all of them were telling me, I can't find staff to run my business. And so that's also a significant concern. So these are all big issues, and we're going to get to work, if I'm fortunate enough to be there, be part of a team, getting work, tackling them right away.
For you, what issue stands out the most?
Well, I think we've been through such a challenging time the last 2.5 years. And it's been, I think overall, I'll say this as a start. There were a number of houses that say to me, Rick, I don't normally vote PC, but I'm voting for you this time because of what Doug Ford and the government did during the pandemic. So obviously I'm very pleased to hear the broad support. Was it perfect? No. This was hugely challenging, but there was support for what the government did. And to me, the biggest challenge is moving forward from that. Let's come together. This campaign will be over. Let's put our differences aside, work together to build a stronger society, stronger community, stronger province, and get folks back to work again and back to a normal life again.
Were there any surprises along the trail or any memorable moments that you'll take home forever?
Well, I will say a lot of people have dogs. As you knock on the door, they're jumping up. But it's the people that tell you the stories about what they've been up to, and you listen for a little while to get a sense from them. I remember talking to folks about their kids having what their kids have been through the last couple of years, away from school and away from their friends, or the challenges, like I said, they've had on some healthcare issues. But I will say it was so invigorating and such a great pleasure to talk to folks door to door to door, and their optimism, their support for our community. It just is so energizing for me as a candidate. It just helps me move forward and work with them and get things done. So it was real great pleasure.
Hi, and welcome back. Well, I called it before CBC did because I said it looked like a PC majority when we went to our video clip, and son of a gun, while we were watching the video clip, CBC said PC majority. So, well, I don't have any special insights. I can just do arithmetic. In all seriousness, there's lots of good stuff happening. As I said before the break, the map is turning blue. And Mike Schreiner has been declared reelected in the riding of Guelph, but there are others. I'm looking for Don Valley West, and it does look like in Don Valley West, Stephanie Bowman, who is is running against Mark Saunders, the former chief of police in Toronto. It's a fairly close race with at this point, only about 200 votes separating them. So that's certainly one to watch. Of course, we can't report Parry Sound Muskoka at all because the polls have not closed there. The other ones to watch are the seats around Brampton North, Brampton South. The various Brampton seats seem to be leaning towards the PCs in this election. I should also add there's quite a bit of orange floating out there on the map. And it shows that the NDP are elected and leading in 24. And some of the ones where it appears that they've been declared elected include Parkdale High Park and the riding of Davenport, which is Merritt Stiles, who is the education critic for the NDP. So some people are coming back in many parts of on the map, but there will probably be some new faces. Here's another one. Peter Bethlenfalvy, who is the Minister of Finance, has been reelected in Pickering Uxbridge, and so he will likely be back in cabinet. There's a lot of looks like in the riding of Durham. Todd McCarthy, who is the incumbent, is also leading. That is notable because the riding of Durham is Aaron O'Toole's riding, the former federal Conservative leader. Always a very interesting community. But again, as you look at the election map, there's a lot of blue out there. However, there are two Liberal seats that have been declared. Stephen Blais in Orléans and Ottawa South, that's John Fraser's riding, have been elected. One to watch for, and this is a really interesting one. You may remember Amanda Simard. Amanda Simard was left the PC caucus early in the last after about a year after the last election, sat as an independent, and then crossed over to the Liberal Party. Well, she's in a pretty close race with Stéphane Sarrazin, who is one of the municipality's mayors in that riding. So two well-known candidates locally, but again, still early, lots of things coming forward. And as they say, this is a very fluid situation. So I'll toss it back to Michael, and we'll see where we are. Michael.
Yeah, thank you, David. That's a lot of information you relayed there, and but I'm sure our viewers are following along. You can see on your screen there, Rick Byers. He's off and running at this point now. Just 17 of 97 polls reporting. So again, lots can change. I'm just going to open it up to the panel, and Ruth, we can start with you. Is there something you have seen that's caught your eye? It could be across the province or locally, whatever it is that has caught your attention here so far.
Well, I always have trouble trying to figure out where we are actually in the counting. There are still polls that are open, I think, at this point. But the strong showing by the Progressive Conservatives, but interesting, apparently it's been picked up not by myself but by the fellow panelists. Doug Ford had a bit of a race in his riding. That's a surprise.
Yes, and we'll keep an eye on that, absolutely. That, as you said, it looks like again, lots of polls still haven't reported, but by the projections, it looks like Conservatives across the province are going to do well. But Doug Ford locked in a good battle in Etobicoke North in his own riding. So we can see That has changed a little bit. Sorry, folks. We have another screen. It looks like Doug Ford has been elected now. But again, that for a little while, his heart might have been in his throat. And Andrea Horvath has been elected the leader of the NDP. Chris, we'll come to you. What have you seen so far in these results that has got your attention?
Well, the huge Conservative numbers.
Yeah.
I honestly thought it would be a lot tighter this time around. I was honestly hoping for a minority government. I think when minority governments work, when you can have those checks and balances, and so I'm surprised that we're kind of giving them carte blanche to do whatever they want for 4 years. And then Del Duca is losing. So once again, a tight race for a leader. That's very surprising. I thought he would actually get out in front. Mm-hmm. He had a great campaign.
And you can see that the Liberals themselves only leading or elected in 9 out of 124 ridings. And as you said, Del Duca, their leader, is not polling well in his own riding. So that's interesting. There'll obviously be more conversation about that, depending on how things are in it. And Chad, hopefully we didn't steal your thunder what you're seeing, but if we did, just add on, what are you seeing so far?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. One of the things that I was watching coming into this election was whether one of the opposition parties was going to emerge as the party to beat the PCs, and it looks clearly as though that didn't happen. It doesn't look like that left side of the spectrum really concentrated within the NDP or within the Liberals, and I think that's having effect on the seats that David mentioned in the suburbs of Brampton, and in the Mississaugas and those kind of suburban Toronto ridings that really is the path to a majority government. When you have that vote splitting and you kind of concentrate the vote within the PCs, I think that really leads to picking up quite a few seats, and so I think that's my takeaway from this, from what we can see so far, anyways. And locally, certainly a huge Conservative showing in all 3 ridings.
Well, and so I'm going to come back to something you said, Chad, and we can all pick up on this idea of vote splitting. And of course, there's often conversations leading into an election about strategic voting. So if you're in a riding where the Liberals have the better chance to beat the Conservatives, the NDP people should vote for the Liberals, or whatever it is, right? So I wondered, especially locally, 9 candidates, a lot of the new ones on that right side of the spectrum, were they going to steal enough votes from Rick Byers that Selwyn Hicks or Karen Gaventa or Danielle Valaquette could slide in there? That hasn't come to fruition. But I wonder, again, the stats I have in front of me, folks, I'll read. 41% of the vote has come in for the Conservatives, 24 and 23% for the NDP and Liberal, respectively. So again, strategic voting, is it splitting on the left now? I don't know. Maybe we'll come to you, Chris, first to comment on it. Or I don't know. I don't know what you want to say. It's just an observation I'm making, I guess.
Interestingly enough, there are actually websites you can go to find out what is the strategic vote in your area.
Right.
My wife was on it on the weekend, and she said the strategic vote, the way they were predicting it, was for the NDP. If you wanted a strategic vote, vote NDP in our area. What I find interesting about that is that doesn't take the candidate into the factor. Like, that's just guesswork as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, there is that split there, and it definitely does help the Conservatives a lot that the NDP and the NDP and the Liberals seem to flop back and forth, and it just is what it is.
I don't know, Ruth, put you on the spot if you have a comment on that or this idea. I don't know, or people, the Conservatives getting at this point, they're leading or elected in 74 seats, needed 63 for a majority. But just with 40% of the popular vote, I don't know, again, that's something that comes up all the time. And what are your comments on how our local ridings are rolling in?
Well, I think it brings up the argument about proportional representation. And are we being fairly represented? And that idea comes up, bubbles to the top every election, but then goes right back down again, because whoever wins often wins with not the full percentage that would actually win them.
When the system's working for you, there's no reason to change it.
Incentive, no matter what you say during the election, and the Liberals federally are an example of that, went right off the radar. But I think when you talk about the percentage here, it will not. I pretty well can guarantee you this is not going to come back as an issue before the next election with the Conservatives in power with a comfortable majority if this stays the way it is for the evening. So.
And I think, folks, it just flashed across your screen. It looks like we're projecting Conservatives elected in all three of the local ridings that we're watching here on Bruce, Lisa Thompson, Rick Byers, Simcoe Gray, and the Conservative candidate in, Lisa Thompson here on Bruce, and the Conservative candidate in Simcoe Gray. Chad, I'm going to come to you, and you see there, Mr. Saunderson, you see that on your screen on Rogers TV. Is there I thought like the NDP and the Liberals, again, Liberal historically maybe have been in the center of the political spectrum. I don't know where we put these parties. They move around all the time. Is there a failure of either of those two parties to define themselves and what they are? I don't know if that's the case or not. Something I think about.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's if you're a liberal voter or a strong liberal supporter, kind of through and through, card-carrying member, and if you're Stephen Del Duca, you have to wonder what went wrong during this election. What was the failure to connect with the individuals? Like leading or elected in 9 seats is not really. I'm sure that's not the game plan or the outcome that they had in mind going into this election. And like I mentioned, I think there's between the NDP and the Liberals, neither one of those parties really solidified themselves as that alternative, that kind of government in waiting party, and I think that's really what's lacking in this election, and really why you're seeing the PCs leading or elected in 77 seats right now.
I think you're absolutely right. There was no one that appeared to be a government in waiting. It wasn't clear.
And we talked off air that, and nobody can question Selwyn Hicks, for instance, as a tremendous candidate. Lots of municipal experience. He's run in elections before, a well-spoken person. Karen Gaventer's put her name forward many times. Very well, again, another well-spoken, knowledgeable person, and the ideology that she has and the people that she represents. But I wonder if the two of them, again, maybe fell victim to their parties maybe not being able to reach the masses. I don't know, Chris, if you'd have a comment on that.
Well, the first comment I'll have is on Selwyn Hicks. That guy is an A1 candidate. Like, I looked that guy in the eye and he gave me a good feeling. Like, I had that feeling of a genuine human being. So I thought he was an A1 candidate for the Liberals. I thought he would do better because he can win you over. And then, like you said, Karen's very experienced. But yeah, the two parties need to really start to define themselves. And I think maybe part of the strategy should be right away. Like, don't wait another 4 years to start your... Like, you can get your candidates or get who your prospective candidates are in line, and you should be, like, every time you see the elected candidate, in this case it's looking like Mr. Byers, every time you see him put something out, a tweet, I've done this, you should be rebutting that and have your name out there and say, like, here I am, I'm the one that's going to be running against you, and here's my opinion on what he's did. And that's how you establish yourself as somebody that people will remember come poll time. I think this whole system of waiting until 2 months before to name your candidate, it doesn't work. You've got to be prepared. The next election should start tomorrow. You should start that work. You should have a candidate in mind and ready to go. That candidate should be doing op-eds or whatever in papers and giving opinions. And that is what I think is the strategy going forward to maybe turn things. You got to have that name recognition.
So go ahead, Ruth. Yeah.
I just want to say that I agree with everything that you said, Chris, about Selwyn Hicks. He is such a fine person. I have some political history with him, but also working with affordable housing. He has been an incredible ally, and he's done so much for the county that it surprises me that he's not doing really well at this point, although we're still only 20 out of 97 polls. So it depends on where they're coming from, but really a truly caring politician and honest, and it's too bad that you're not rewarded for those qualities. And
And we know that you talked so eloquently earlier about the type of people that put their names forward that are on these ballots, and they will continue to do the great work they're doing in their communities, and as you said, hold the other people's feet to the fire and that sort of thing. And the candidates that win, Rick Byers, Bruce Gray, Owen Sound, Lisa Thompson, Mr. Saunderson, and Simcoe Gray, they've obviously done some. Their party, looks like the Conservatives have done a good job as a party winning over Ontarians, but they've also done the hard work to win over their local electors as well, and we can't forget that they've put in a whole ton of work. We'll maybe have to talk about some leaders when we come back. Stephen Del Duca, we haven't seen his name come across in a little bit, but he was losing by 1,300 votes the last time I saw it a couple minutes ago. What does this, well, if he doesn't win, we maybe know what it means for him. What does this mean for Andrea Horvath going forward? She's had a couple of chances at this. I guess we know what it means for Doug Ford, but there's some conversations to be had. David, we'll go back to you and you can let us know what you're seeing, bring you back into the conversation, and we'll have more to break down here after we hear from David.
Well, just to on that very subject of Stephen Del Duca, he's down by about 2,500 votes right now with Michael Tiabollo. And I'm sorry, it's moved again. Michael Tiabollo has been declared elected in Vaughan Woodbridge. So that's going to change the political calculus, I suspect, for Stephen Del Duca as they move forward. Particularly, I noticed that the Liberals are elected and leading in 10, and that's about where they stood before. Now, I'm going to ask a question for the panel that they can consider in their next go round. Is this a reprise of the federal election where we've just had nothing, or no significant change? That's something at least to talk about. But it does look like an overwhelming blue map. A couple of other things that are worth keeping an eye on. Don Valley West, where again Mark Saunders was running for the Conservatives. That's a very, very tight race. He's got 12,500, but Stephanie Bowman from the Liberals is pulling well ahead. She's now up to 14,000. So there's about 2,500 votes separating them right there now, with almost with 42 of 49 polls. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Other ones to keep an eye on: Barrie Springwater, Oro Medonte, where Doug Downey is the incumbent. He is the Attorney General, and he's in a real fight there at this point, with 27 of 67 polls reporting, and it looks like there's probably about 50 votes separating him from Jeff Lehman, who's in the lead. So that could change any minute, but that's something that is certainly worth watching. Finally, there's one more riding that needs to be watched, and that's Parry Sound Muskoka. We've just started getting the first results in, and this is another horse race, as they say. Graydon Smith, the Progressive Conservatives, is in the lead at 14,209. But Matt Richter is, for the Green Party, is chomping at his heels. 13,257 with 61 of 96 polls reporting. So that could swing either way before the evening is out. So keep your eyes on that. And we've got one more interview with one of our candidates. We have Joel Lahid, who's going to be talking to us about his run. From the None of the Above party. None of the Above Direct Democracy, right?
That's the full title.
That's the full name.
That's the full name, yeah. I like to just go by None of the Above because that's the point.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you're just waiting.
I'm waiting. Yeah, we're waiting to watch the results roll in, and excited to see how it all shook out.
Sure. What's your sense of, have people found your message attractive?
Yeah, very attractive. I've been really pleasantly surprised by the positive feedback we've got throughout the campaign. I got a lot of emails from folks who watched watched our interview, saw the live debate in No and Sound, came out to some of the other debates that I attended, Flesherton, for example. People are refreshed to see that this is an option, and also refreshed to see somebody running in politics and not simply towing a party line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you think that'll carry over into some good results?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I've heard people come out of the woodwork and say that they're voting for the first time in a long time because now there's an option that says none of the above.
Sure.
They wanted none of the above to be on the ballot, and here it is.
Well, we'll see, I guess, just what the result will be, and at the end of the night, or even tomorrow, you'll have a better idea of the party. Now, how many candidates are running across Ontario?
28 this time around.
28,
yeah.
Okay. I thought it was less than that, but it's 28.
28 province-wide, yeah. And certainly the goal is to have one in every riding for the next election. And Greg, our party leader, is pretty driven, so I think that's a real possibility.
Sure. So if you aren't successful this time, there's always the next election, isn't there?
There's always the next election, and we're certainly not going to back off of this message, so wait for us next time.
Sure. Sure. Well, I really want to thank you for stopping in and for telling us a bit about how things have gone, and best wishes to you as you await the results.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. Brampton? Or is he, he's provincially, right? Oh, hello. Sorry, folks. We, we're back here. It's live television, and it is rocking. This province is moving along, whether we're ready for it or not. So there we go. But yeah, thank you again for tuning into the live election results on Rogers TV. We enjoy bringing them to you, and Mark Perry and his team do such a good job getting us set up here. And Chris, Chad, Ruth, and I love to break this stuff down for you. One thing that has been proven locally, I'll say, is that some of these new parties or the less established parties really have had no effect on these election results. And Chad, maybe we'll start with you on that. Did you think they'd have more of an effect, or is this, and you can talk about that in general too, provincially and locally, but you know, again, we're sitting with Rick Byers and Bruce Grey Owen Sound now with 49.7% of the popular vote, when a lot of those newer parties you would think might take votes from him.
Yeah, I think when I think back to the last federal election when we were all back in the studio, and the PPC was an option on the right, and it certainly there was a concentration of votes, but far more than what we're seeing in this election. I don't think that those fringe parties on the right have had that oomph in this election and that concentration of support. It's really fascinating to watch. I think that going into this, you might have thought that New Blue might pick up a few here and there, Ontario a few here and there, and it all seems to be sticking pretty well within the PC party.
Yeah, and Ruth, again, maybe you can comment on that, or surprise, or is this what you thought? Like, what we didn't really get into predictions because that's not kind of what we do, but I think all of us are surprised by some of the things that are going on throughout the province and locally.
I'm not sure whether it's surprised or disappointed that I'm speaking of, but I thought Selwyn would do better in this riding. I thought the riding might be up for grabs this time, but that's not happening. I thought the Green Party would be stronger, have a stronger showing here. They had a strong candidate, and there's a lot of support for pushing forward the agenda of the Green Party, so I'm surprised that there.
And they've had a bit of a history, kind of as possible disruptors in Bruce Grey Owen Sound as well, haven't they?
Yes, they have, and that surprises me a bit. Still, what have we got here?
Yeah, we're 30 of 97 polls reporting in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, and it's showing that Rick Byers with 49.3% of the vote, and you mentioned Danielle Valaquette, 9% of the vote in this election. And yeah, Chris, comment on that to you.
Well, I'm going to say I wasn't shocked. I am a believer in the put a blue coat on a goat theory, that that's the riding we're in. I do believe that is the way it goes, but I did think it would be closer. I thought Rick Byers would win, but I thought with Selwyn Hicks being so strong, Karen being a returning and knowledgeable, and Danielle, I honestly thought that it was going to be closer, and I did think that the fringe parties would actually get a bigger vote. I thought that they were starting to gain some traction with their message, and I thought they would steal, and I thought Rick should be nervous coming in tonight because that was going to be the X factor, but clearly people have stuck with the party. Bill Walker, Bill Murdoch have made such a strong name here that it is just, it's ironclad, and we're here again. So.
Yeah, interesting. And again, our three local ridings, Bruce Grey Owen Sound, Simcoe Grey, Huron Bruce, will be staying blue. So they don't have to change the sign color on their offices. So there you go. Anyway, but let's talk about some leaders, because obviously Doug Ford, he's in good shape. He's delivering a huge majority, and he's already been elected in Etobicoke North. Andrea Horwath has been elected. We can talk about whether this is enough of a showing to keep her as the NDP leader, and of course Del Duca's still in a fight whether he's going to get elected or not. We'll see his name come across here pretty soon. Chris, we'll go back and we'll start with you. You can talk about Andrea Horwath, whatever. Pick a leader, or all three. And Mike Schreiner you can throw in the mix. He's elected again himself, but we thought we might get a second or third Green candidate, or MPP. We don't. What are you thinking as far as the leaders go?
I think this is the last election we see with Andrea Horwath and Stephen Del Duca. I think on the next ballot we will see Mike Schreiner return.
Yeah.
He had a really strong showing. He was excellent in the debates. And of course you're going to see Doug Ford return, but I think you will see a new NDP leader for sure. I think that work starts tomorrow. I don't see Andrea surviving this and moving forward as leader. She's had too many kicks at the can. Yeah. She hasn't delivered. And I think that this is her swan song. And obviously Del Duca getting beat the way he's getting beat, I don't think the Liberals can put their eggs in that basket anymore.
No, and even if Del Duca comes through, and again, we'll see his riding come up on the other screen that we've got, and we'll fill in the viewers. But even if he comes through in his riding, the Liberals won't be happy with 9 seats, Chad.
No, this is a disappointing night for the Liberal Party of Ontario. I think coming into this election, there were some pretty big expectations on this party to get back to its former glory, and this is. I'm trying to find words to nicely put it, but it's been a collapse, absolutely.
Yeah. It's unacceptable to the party. That I think that there's going to have to be a lot of soul searching. And I expect Del Duca is out. There's got to be somebody that captures the imagination of the public more than what he was doing during this campaign, obviously. And so...
And they are CP24 and some other outlets are reporting that Stephen Del Duca has lost his riding. Yeah. So he is not returning as a member of provincial parliament. So there's an easy decision to make. In his concession speech tonight, I mean, those will be interesting to see.
Absolutely.
And it will be interesting. We talked before the show with Andrea Horwath. Does she say anything tonight? I mean, there'll be the official opposition. So they've got that. So does she say anything tonight, or will we have to wait a couple of weeks for the dust to settle to see what her future is?
I think in the best interest of the party, she should just say it tonight so that work, once again, like I said, that work needs to start tomorrow, because 4 years will pass fast. People need to get their names out there. We need to start. That work needs to start tomorrow to establish themselves, establish a new leader, start getting that work in, start a new platform, because the NDP and the Liberal are both in the same boat. Even though the NDP will be the official opposition, we start tomorrow, and we got to capture the minds and imaginations of Ontarians and make them see that there's other options, or just capture those dreams.
And you said that the NDP and Liberal are kind of in the same boat. They both have 23% of the popular vote right now. So again, in our system, that doesn't always tell you. In the first past the post system, obviously the NDP in the end will look a great deal more successful. But when you break down the analytics, they've done the same. Maybe we should switch to, in a sense, a positive note. What have the PCs done right? They have governed for, through a really tough time. We talked about, hopefully a time we never have to go through again. Chad, I guess we can start with you. What have the Conservatives done right to be leading and elected in 80 seats in Ontario?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's this is an incredible night for the PC party. This was a hard term to govern through, an incredibly hard term to govern through. Managing a global pandemic as a provincial government in Canada was not an easy task, and I think that it speaks volumes to the work that the PC government did during the election to navigate those tricky waters. And And I think their campaign message was quite simple and easy to understand. We're going to get it done, and I think that connected with a lot of people across the province. It was quite maybe quite simple, but it was effective, and I think that they had a really solid message. They presented it well, and it clearly landed.
Yeah, and Chris, to you, what did they do right to capture the votes of Ontarians? We saw when we were together last the Liberals calling a federal election during the pandemic, and were returned to basically a minority government. Like they were returned to what they had before. The Conservatives have even sort of upped their hold on Ontario, if you want to say that.
Well, honestly, if I'm going to put my personal feelings into this, I can't even believe it. I didn't think they did anything right. I thought the Bill 124, the attack on healthcare workers and freezing their salaries in a pandemic when we valued them the most, the fight with teachers right at the beginning, the attacks on, union bargaining rights. I thought all that stuff would affect their showing, and apparently it hasn't. People believe that they're doing a good job, and I think it must be the fiscal, if I'm going to take a guess, it's the fiscal responsibility aspect that people view the PCs as the most fiscally responsible party.
Yeah, Ruth, go ahead.
I think one of the things that has hurt the Liberal Party is the federal Liberal Party.
Yeah.
I think right now there is not a lot of respect for the federal Liberal Party. And I heard it out there when I was going to doors with Selwyn. And I don't know how you manage to separate yourself from that, because you're both the same party, but I think that the bloom is off the rose with Justin Trudeau when you listen to what people are saying. And I think the provincial Liberals have paid a price for that.
Well, and you mentioned it even from when you were a candidate going around and they wanted to talk to you about stuff that was not,
Absolutely.
that you would not be making decisions on, right? If you're a federal candidate being asked about education, or a provincial candidate asked about border security, whatever it is. And so I wonder if the Conservative Party of Canada and then the Progressive Conservative Party, there are differences now, right, between those two parties. Yeah. NDP still the same. Maybe the NDP voters like what Jagmeet Singh's doing, and then the federal NDP, I don't know. But that's an interesting thought, Ruth, that carryover between, because and I don't blame people. It is complicated stuff. Some, people are living busy lives, but to keep them separated.
Well, and I think that handgun control bill 2 days ago.
Yes.
I said that's the end of the Liberals in this area, because people feel very strongly, as I found out at the doors. And for their own personal reasons, and that I know that would not have helped.
Well, and I wonder if again, to that exact issue, did Stephen Del Duca have to make a phone call? Oh, come on, you hook me up here. Wait 3 days. Do these parties communicate like that? I don't know if they do.
Absolutely, I think absolutely they do.
Or maybe they should if they don't.
Well, and it's an interesting point about Justin Trudeau. I think it's the same with the NDP. Recently, the NDP federally came to an agreement with the Liberal Party federally, which people are mad about. But I don't, once again, I looked at it and I'm not mad about it. I think it's a great deal for Canadians. It really is. But it put the NDP in a situation where they're now viewed as in bed with the Liberal Party. Jagmeet Singh is just supporting everything Justin Trudeau wants. And I think maybe we might be seeing that effect the same with the NDP tonight, that perception federally is affecting some of their vote.
Yeah. And maybe, Chad, you can talk about it. You've worked both for provincial MPP, you've worked for Bill Walker, you've worked for Larry Miller. So you've worked in both those offices. What is that type of connection or community? And I think it's different maybe with every party, but how do those different parties communicate, and again, around elections and timing of decisions?
Well, absolutely. I'm thinking back right now as we're having this conversation to the 2019 federal election, when the federal Conservative Party basically told Doug Ford and his candidates to stay away from the election. We're a long ways away from that. That PC party is probably telling the federal Conservative Party to stay away at this point. It's quite an interesting dynamic where we've come from the tenure of this government, that kind of those rocky roads at the start, and again, telling the feds telling them to back off a bit and not be involved in the campaign, to now sweeping the province. It's really interesting.
Well, I remember Kathleen Wynne really working hard on behalf of Justin Trudeau at different times. Like, you know, so sometimes it can work in favor. Sometimes you're like, just stay over there for a little while.
Absolutely.
And you've had a premier who would not speak to the media, was reluctant to be involved in any kind of give and take discussion, even at a rally. And that works?
Yeah.
That works?
It seems to have worked. As you can see on our screen there, folks, the Conservatives leading are elected in 80 ridings, NDP 29, the Liberals 9, Greens 1, and we have an independent leading or elected in 1 riding as well. So we'll go over to David Shearman. I know he's been chomping at the bit to fill us in. Lots of voices here that need to be heard, so we'll go over to you, David.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, panel. That one independent is really interesting. That's Haldeman Norfolk. And Bobby Ann Brady, who has a long history as a part of the Progressive Conservative Party, president of the Riding Association and all this stuff, is well in the lead over the Progressive Conservative candidate, Ken Hewitt. So make of that what you wish, but I think that this will mean that there probably will be at least one independent candidate sitting in the legislature. Although it's only 50% of the polls have reported, 33 of 62, so they've still got that could be a horse race. Other ones that are of somewhat interest, if you look at the map, you'll discover London is orange. All 3 London ridings are orange. London Fanshawe, London North Centre, London West, all orange. One of the surprising things I noticed was that in Northern Ontario, the Conservatives have taken Timmins. And why is that important? Well, the Gilles Bisson was the New Democrat MPP for a long time, and he was defeated. And it looks like it's a significant defeat for the NPDP in that riding. At the same time, there's still a lot of orange in Northern Ontario. We're still watching Barrie, Springwater, Oro, Medonte. That's a real close one. Right now, 21 votes are separating the PCs and the Liberals, and it's been going back and forth all night. Another riding is Eglinton Lawrence, and that's where the PCs are in the lead by 191 votes. So, 1 or 2 polls could make the difference there. The Liberals were able to flip one riding. Beaches East York is a Liberal riding, and I believe that was Kate Dupuis from the NDP. So you've got at least one flip happening. Other places, Toronto, St. Paul's, that's always an interesting riding to watch. It is it has been an NDP riding, and it appears that the NDP and the Liberals are fighting that out. Jill Andrew and Nathan Stahl are very close, with 23 of but half of the polls reporting. So lots of exciting stuff going on as you move the map around, and I have to say that it's a very interesting way to look at an election. Up in Northern Ontario, Kenora Rainy River has gone Conservative. That's Greg Rickford's riding, handily winning over New Democrat Joanne Formanek Gustafson, and Thunder Bay at Akokan. Very close, not real close race there. Conservative Kevin Holland is in a fight with Judith Monteith Farrell, the incumbent NDP. So there's lots of things to come yet. We're not done. Oh, and I knew something would happen in Parry Sound, Muskoka. Graydon Smith, the Progressive Conservative, has been declared the winner in Parry Sound, Muskoka, defeating Green Party candidate Matt Richter. So, and it looks like it's about 2,000 votes difference between the two. So that's been called with 86 of 96 polls reporting. So what we've got there is the Green hope for another seat, at least at that point, has been dashed, although Their leader is still definitely going to be in the legislature, and pretty much. I should also, one more I should add is the KW area. It has also gone orange. We've got in Kitchener Centre, we've got Lori May Lindu, New Democrat incumbent, who has been declared a winner, well ahead of the Progressive Conservative candidate. And that's Waterloo. I want the other one. There we go. No, that's it. I love it when the map doesn't play right. There's one. Anyway, it doesn't matter because, there we go. Yes, Catherine Fife is declared a winner in the riding of Waterloo over Andrew Aiken, the Progressive Conservative, which makes, and then with Kitchener Centre, Lori May Lindu declared elected. It makes all of KW orange, and as well as Hamilton, Niagara, and some of the core Toronto seats as well. So it's really a very interesting shift that really isn't a shift. Although the Conservatives simply picked up more seats, the NDP have lost, the Liberals have stayed the same, and the Greens are at the same as well. So we're kind of back at the status quo. So that's about where things stand now, Michael. So I'll toss it back to you and to the panel for your comments and your reflections. There are some horse races, but we just gotta watch and wait.
Yeah, thank you, David. Again, things are both moving quickly and slowly at the same time, because you can see that we're still in Simcoe Grey, only 55 of 64 polls reporting. There are 97 polls. There it is in Bruce Grey, Owen Sound. So just under half the polls still reported, although they're projecting that Rick Byers is elected already. One riding we're keeping an eye on, Kitchener-Conestoga. My name is Michael Harris, but some people call me Mike. Well, Mike Harris from the Progressive Conservative Party is winning in Kitchener-Conestoga. I'm sure he's a great person with a name like that. Anyway, I don't know him. We just, for frivolity, we're looking at that one. But yeah, still, we saw one seat go. Conservatives were up to 81 and Liberals down to 8 at one point. So there will still be some slight changes. But really, the map as it's being established is going to be what it is. Conservative, I guess you'd call it a landslide. There's no other way to say it. We were talking a little bit before about some of the surprise that some northern ridings have gone the Conservatives. Often a stronghold of the NDP, some Liberals in there too. But maybe, Chad, you could talk about, if you can, what's maybe gone on in the north that the Conservative Party's been able to make gains in that part of Ontario? Yeah, I think the PC's made a pretty significant effort to connect with that kind of working class, potentially unionized workers in Northern Ontario. The message around working for workers, I think, really has connected. That's something that you heard throughout the PC's last budget in government, and effectively they ran on their budget in this election. So that notion of working for workers and this kind of string of union endorsements that they were able to pick up throughout the election was something new to the PC and Conservative parties, and I think probably we're seeing the results of those efforts come through in the north. Go ahead, Ruth.
Chris, to you, those promises to the union workers and the union support that was coming back. One of the stories that I was reading was that the percentage of people in those unions was not that high, but the reality was it sure made a good soundbite. It sounded like every union in Ontario was supporting the Conservatives, but the percentage that they represented was low. Is that correct?
There's more unions that didn't support than did. That is a fact. More unions were, no, Conservatives are not good for the working man. Privatization is real. Doug Ford made the promise that he would privatize anything that was nailed down. That's his exact quote. That is bad for union workers, because what privatization means is trying to take public work away and do things at a cheaper price for increased profits, right? As for public work, you're working to get your job done, and it's proven in long-term care. The long-term care homes during COVID that were public had a better success rate than privatized care. But The message that Chad talked about obviously spoke to the union workers in the north. They believed that the Conservatives were going to work for the working man, but unions on a whole, or the majority, didn't believe that way. So it is what it is. We got to sort that out in the end. Hopefully we don't have to worry too much, but unions are going to be there. They're going to be loud over the next 4 years. I'm quite sure of that.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go with that conversation, because, as I said, in my understanding of Ontario politics, generally, Hamilton would be, lots of unionized workers in Hamilton would often elect NDP. Windsor, this is similar with car plants, things, and the North, lots of unionized work in the North would elect. So now that they've shifted, at least for this election, it will be interesting how the people in those ridings hold their candidates to account for the promises that they made. And I guess we'll have to wait 4 years to see whether they live up to those promises. But that will be interesting, won't it, Chris, to see how the people, and in every riding, but again, where there's been a change from the norm, it'll be interesting to see how the people hold their candidates to the fire.
Well, like I said, just as fast as it's switched, it can switch back. Because if those promises aren't kept, and I'm totally predicting a government that has these attacks on workers. Bill 124 will now go through, which is an attack on healthcare workers. All that stuff will be maintained. What will workers think 4 years from now? Will they think they did the right thing? And if their candidates don't hold true to that worker first promise, will this flop back in 4 years? And will we see the return or the resurgence of NDP in those strongholds? And that's what I would predict.
Yeah. And right now, we're told Doug Ford is addressing the crowd, and obviously he's going to have a big smile on his face. Again, lots of people were predicting a Conservative majority, but I don't know if they thought it would be this resounding, I guess. Chad, what do you think Doug Ford's message will be on a night like tonight? Obviously thank yous, but how does he kind of set up the next little while?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a steady hand on the tiller message that, we have our plan. Again, they largely ran on the last budget that they introduced. So I think it really is that continuity of government. We have a stable majority, right. A resounding message from Ontarians that Ontarians have placed their trust in this government to see us through over these next years, and there are challenges to face over the next 4 years. So we're on the tail end of a pandemic, and hopefully on the tail end of a pandemic. But there are still pretty massive decisions. There's issues around climate change that we need to be tackling in these next 4 years if we have any hope of meeting net zero ambitions. So there's some really substantial pieces to fall in. And I think the message from the PCs tonight will likely be that, steady hand on the tiller, we have our plan, and thank you for your support, and here we go.
And I was going to say, and to you, Ruth, on maybe that same thing, and what are the messages coming from other parties as well?
Well,
go ahead,
thinking in terms of endorsements by mayors, the mayor in Windsor endorsed the PC party.
Again, which is a change.
Which is a change, and you wonder how much influence that has. I don't think it's appropriate for mayors to get mixed up in this. That's just my personal opinion. But that's a pretty strong message from the mayor of a city that has been looked on as either NDP or Liberal for the most part, and the same in Niagara. I find it perplexing that a mayor would put themselves out there that way. As long as you're on the wrong or the right side, at the end of the day, it works. But if you've happened to endorse the wrong party, good luck when you have infrastructure problems. So it's
well, and even you mentioned that. Yes, if you're in Windsor and you're promoting the Conservatives, and then the Liberals sweep to power, you probably aren't getting, well, I don't know, I shouldn't say that, but it might be a little more difficult to have that conversation about working with the government. But also it might be tough for you in your re-election. If you're endorsing a candidate who doesn't win, you're aligning yourself with the other people, so that is risky.
That's true. Yeah.
Especially with the municipal election only a few months away.
Yeah.
It's a huge risk.
Exactly. That's what was surprising to me, that they would take that risk. Yeah. And as I say, to me, it's inappropriate. That's,
it's an early plug for election coverage in October here on Rogers TV. We'll gear up for municipal
don't
elections.
make us do this again.
Ruth, get some rest. We're coming back in October. But yeah, so you don't see like lots of politicians, whether they be, again, a provincial politician not wanting to weigh in on a federal election, or a mayor, maybe staying out of that, city councillors. That is, there's lots of differing views on that, aren't there? Whether or not you should weigh in on that. Chad, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a personal decision. You kind of have to stick to. I think it's clear that municipal politicians have their brands, and that's it. But whether you make it that overt, I think that's a decision, and you got to own the consequences, as Ruth had mentioned. Yeah.
And again, results rolling in. Simcoe Grey, 62 of 64 polls have reported. So that one is wrapping up. Again, some polls throughout, like Algoma, Manitoulin, they're going to have a poll that's not closing till 11 o'clock. We're not there yet, are we? Time flies by. No, we're not. 10:15. I don't know how much time's going by. We're having too much fun. But we'll slide it back to David to get some of his thoughts. Again, I know he's scrolling through what's going on in Ontario. So, David, back to you.
Thank you, Michael. Now, in looking at the electoral map, I can say that Michael Ford, the Premier's nephew, was elected. One of the ones I'm really keeping an eye on. Oh, before I go there, Peter Tabuns, elected in Toronto Danforth, so he's back in the legislature. But I'm keeping an eye on Toronto Centre, because that's a close one. Not as close as some, but we've got Kristen Wong Tam, who has Kristen Wong Tam, who is currently leading in Toronto Centre. And if I am correct, if all this goes the way I think it will go, I've got to do something here. I do believe. I'm just making sure I can do. There we go. Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, we're going to be joining Selwyn Hicks very, very shortly to have a conversation with him. Other ridings which are of interest. Now I can go back to that. Don Valley West was a riding which where former Chief Mark Saunders was running. Stephanie Bowman, the Liberal candidate, has been declared elected. I have to say that the horse race that was going on in up around Barrie at, I'm just going to pull that up, my golly, Jeff Lehman and Doug Downey. At this point, there are 2 votes separating those 2 candidates. So it's quite remarkable. 14,384 for Lehman, 14,382 for Downey, with 56 of 57 polls reporting. Now, what that may mean is they'll go to a recount. I'm not sure whether I think there is a mandatory recount there. So, all right. Now, what I'm going to do, Michael, I'm going to toss this quickly back to you for a couple of seconds while I reorganize myself to talk to Selwyn. So if you could just carry the ball for about a minute, I would deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my best trade is passing the ball to the experts. So maybe we'll go again to that candidate experience, and we're gonna hear right from Selwyn Hicks, and of course he'll be disappointed. We know that. But I guess from the candidates, and Chris, we can start with you. What's going on in their election suites right now with their family and friends? What's going through their heads?
Well, you're disappointed, obviously, but there's a certain level of fatigue you're facing after being out there pounding the doors, doing all the events, doing public speaking, all that stuff. There's a certain level of relief that it's over. Of course you're disappointed, but you're just tired. You're ready to move on and get on to the next stage, whatever that is for you. For me, I had to after the federal election, I had to take a couple days and just veg and just chill and re-energize myself. And I think every candidate will be different, but they'll be doing something to re-energize.
And Ruth, just a quick comment to you, and then we'll go. I hear that we have Selwyn Hicks ready, but a quick comment to you.
I think you also take away some really good things from running too. There are things that have opened up to you, new experiences, new friends. You take that away at the end of the day as well, and that's good to focus on, I think. And also, it's bittersweet. There is a certain relief that you're going to have your life back, even for a week, you know. And with Selwyn, very selfishly, I say this, that he has been such a friend to affordable housing, and I'm chair of that in Owen Sound. It's one way I'm glad he's still going to be warden. I would love for him to have been our member, but he's got his hands full. He's got an agenda, and he really has an opportunity to simply carry on with all that is meaningful to him, and so.
And on that note, we are going to slide across the studio and invite David Shearman back in with Selwyn Hicks.
Selwyn, how are you?
Well, I've been better. I'd be a lot better if I had a check mark next to my name.
Oh, I'm sure, but I don't know whether you heard Ruth Lovell-Stanner's comment. She said, you know, the good news is that Selwyn can keep on being warden.
Maybe that's how I'm going to play it. I'll tell you that the people so wanted me to continue as their warden that they just did not want to see me go. There you go.
Exactly, Selwyn. But I was also going to say that this may set up some expectations for the next municipal election for you.
Well, you know, I have that to consider now, I suppose, don't I?
Yes, indeed. So, a well-thought campaign, a campaign that was quite good, but in the end, you were not able to flip the riding, as they say.
No, not at all. And listen, I got to tell you, I had a fantastic team, dedicated people that just threw themselves into supporting me and the plan that I had to offer. So I'm very, very proud of what we did, despite the result. The people are always right, they say. And, you know, obviously the Conservatives are offering a message and offering a plan that seems to resonate with the majority of the people. And we have to respect that, don't we?
Absolutely. As the old saying goes, the only poll that matters is the one on voting day. And when the people speak, the people speak.
They sure do. And, you know, listen, I expected it would be a closer race, but who knows? So we're all learning tonight. But I'm okay. I'm tired. I'm going to take some time. I'm going to get into a canoe and portage for as much as possible and get away from people for a few days. That's after we clean up the signs, of course. But yeah, I'll be right back at it, back into my position as warden and deputy mayor for the town of Hanover. And I'll continue to do my thing. We're focused, of course, on mental health and addictions. So I'm looking forward to jumping right back into that agenda.
That's great. Well, Selwyn, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and best wishes to you again. And hey, you and I'll get to talk as municipal politics on Politically Speaking.
We sure will. Have a good night, David. Take care.
Thank you, Selwyn. Take care.
And so you can see there, Selwyn Hicks maintained his sense of humor and his, I'll even say, like, sense of purpose as well, Ruth. And you talked about that. He's doing a lot of great work in the community as warden of Grey County, deputy mayor of Hanover, and probably doing a smart thing, getting off in the canoe. I don't know where he's going, whether it's the Saugeen River or Algonquin Park or who knows. But sounds like, again, disappointed, but okay. You know, he'll be okay after this.
Of course.
Yeah. And let's shift focus a bit to Rick Byers. So, again, he's now in, you know, the third in a string of longstanding Conservative MPPs. Bill Murdoch took over for Ron Lipsett in 1990 and till 2011, and then Bill Walker has been in for the last 11 years. What expectations, and Chad, we'll start with you, what expectations does that place upon Rick Byers, the successful candidate in Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get to that question
sure,
in a
go
second,
ahead, yeah.
Michael. I haven't had a chance to say how impressed I am with Selwyn.
Sorry,
as well.
I didn't need to pass you over there. Good man.
No, absolutely. And I think that he's an outstanding municipal politician. It would have made an outstanding MPP as well. I'm sure he really is a politician that works for the people. He's done a lot of really great stuff locally. And again, as Ruth mentioned, kind of somewhat selfishly, it's nice to see him stay in municipal politics and continue that work. And as well, Danielle Valaquette, who was running for the Green Party, it's good to see that she's still involved in politics locally at the municipal table there in Grey Highlands as well.
Yeah.
So really, we're blessed with the ballot this time around that a good chunk of the kind of candidates from the main parties are going to stay involved in local politics here in the region. Yeah. And to your question about Mr. Byers, about Rick, I think Rick ran a really great campaign. I think he worked incredibly hard from what we could see. He was out knocking doors, connecting with people, and there's definitely a high bar set for him in terms of, we talked about Energizer Billy and Bill Murdoch as well, really being those constituency focused MPPs, and that's sort of an expectation here in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, that you are gonna, Bill Walker always used to say, if somebody invites you to their church dinner, maybe you think it's just another one of 7, but for those people that invited you, that's the one that you missed.
The only one, that's right.
So I think there is that expectation that you are going to be there, you're going to be present in the community, and I think that's the legacy that he's got to live up to.
Chris, we'll come to you on that same thought, but I'll mention too, one of the things that I wondered about coming into this is the Conservative Party of Ontario decided not to run a nomination process in this riding, and I wondered if that would hurt them, because over the time of Murdoch and Walker, there's been a very strong Conservative riding association set up, and there's some really influential people within the party in that riding association. So I wondered how that might affect Rick Byers' prospects, that those people are kind of shut out of choosing him as a candidate. Not that he wasn't a great candidate, that's not what I'm suggesting, but that people didn't get a chance to decide that for themselves. Chris, that doesn't seem to have had an effect, and so what type of expectations, we'll say, does he take to Queen's Park with him?
Well, first of all, I think he needs to change his name to Bill, so we don't get confused. It's been Bill for how many years?
That's right, yeah.
So Bill Byers, I think about it. No, I think he's got high expectations. His party will want him to carry on the hard work of the previous 2 and continue that. He will need to take that to Queen's Park. He will need to step into those shoes, and it is huge shoes to fill. When you've had this kind of control in a riding for so long, if you're the one that loses it, it's not a good thing. So he's got big shoes to fill. He's got to have a lot of hard work to do, and I wish him the best of luck. Once again, it takes a lot of courage to step into that spot, especially when you're appointed, and you're right. He was dropped in. He was not voted in. So obviously there's a lot of faith in him. So it'll be interesting to see if he lives up to it.
And Ruth, again to you, what does the electorate of Bruce Grey Owen Sound, what are they sending Rick Byers to Queen's Park to do, or to what is the message they're sending him with to Toronto? Do we know, or what expectations does he have to live up to?
Well, I think the expectation is that he'll be Bill Murdoch, Bill Walker, rolled in one.
Yeah.
I can't see that there would be much more.
So it'll be interesting to see, again, because we're here. What did I say? So 32 years of Conservative members, those 2, each long stretches. It'll be interesting to see maybe how Rick differentiates himself from the previous 2 MPPs, or even just from Bill Walker, who's he stood on his own for so long as well. So I think that will be interesting, Ruth. Maybe what steps he takes to be his own person.
To be his own person, yeah. It will be hard not to be constantly compared to the 2 Bills.
Yeah. And we do have the blue sort of ring in Simcoe Grey, and here on Bruce and Bruce Grey Owen Sound, so our 3 ridings have stayed blue. 2 ridings are where we're sitting here in Owen Sound and Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Not incumbent Jim Wilson, who was sitting as an independent, did not run again in Simcoe Grey, and those stay blue. And Lisa Thompson, of course, re-elected in here on Bruce. Andrea Horvath, we understand, is speaking to her people, and we'll hear, before we go off the air, maybe we'll hear what she says to her supporters, and whether she stays strong and decides to stay on as leader, at least for now or whatever. But if she doesn't say something tonight, that will be interesting to watch over the next couple of weeks. And David, I'm sure you're watching some other developments and hearing from some other things that are going on throughout the province. So David, we'll come back to you to hear and listen to what you're keeping an eye on.
Well, Barrie Springwater Oro Medonte is still neck and neck, literally neck and neck, with 2 votes separating the Liberal and Progressive Conservative candidates. The Eglinton Lawrence is another one, 260 votes. But I'd see that Kristen Wong Tam has been declared elected in Toronto Centre, which is not exactly a surprise, but it's interesting to see. A couple of the other Toronto horse races is Toronto St. Paul's with Jill Andrews still not declared the winner. She's the incumbent. And we still have a couple of ridings that are where the polls have not yet closed. Flamborough Glanbrook in down near Hamilton, and there was a riding up near Algoma Manitoulin. They won't close till after 11 o'clock, so those results you won't see. However, we also have a conversation with Rick Byers, and you can watch it now. So we'll let Rick have his last word.
Fantastic team of volunteers we had. They've worked so hard in everything, and to have it's a victory. It's we, the whole team, are winners tonight. And my name's on the ballot, but I'm benefited from a fantastic support from a fantastic team.
What do you want to say to the folks who voted for you and to the rest of your constituents?
So folks who voted for me here in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, I am very, very grateful for your support. I will work every day as hard as I can to continue to earn that trust, and look forward to doing that. To the folks who voted for other candidates, we had some very good other candidates here. I respect your decision. I will listen and learn, and I know that I represent all of Bruce Grey Owen Sound as MPP, and I will do that.
Anything you want to say to the rest of the candidates that were in this election?
Well, I'm so grateful for you having put a huge effort forward. I respect very much the positions you put forward to the voters in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, and I learned something from each of you. Thank you for putting your name forward, and thank you for campaigning with integrity and hard work. Very best.
Anyone you want to say thank you to before we let you go?
Well, my dear wife Margot of almost 36 years is number one, of course. She's been a great supporter. And number two, our fantastic MPP, Bill Walker, who worked very, very hard here for almost 11 years as MPP and delivered so much to our community. Those are the two names that are on top of mind, but many more to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
And we're back with, dare I say it, the last word from our candidates, from the victorious and soon-to-be installed MPP, Rick Byers. Just a quick rundown of the vote here in Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Of course, Rick took over 14,195 votes. Selwyn Hicks, 5,665. Karen Giventer, 4,054. The Green Party, Danielle Valquette, 2,574. The Ontario Party, Suzanne Coles, 1,202. The New Blue Party, Vince Grimaldi, 735. None of the above Direct Democracy Party, Joel Lahead, 172. Populist Party of Ontario, Joseph Westover, 169. And the independent candidate, Ray McKakenin, 150 votes. So that's how it looks at the, I guess, pretty close to the end of the night, and with 69 of 97 polls reporting, those numbers will probably change, but it appears without question Rick Byers will be the new MPP for Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Michael, panel, back to you.
Yeah, one of the things we're watching too, we've mentioned it, the seat numbers are one thing, vote share is another, right? And so when we're looking at it before, the Liberals and the NDP were pretty much in a dead heat at 23%. One thing we're looking at is the NDP's vote share is they have 9 fewer seats than last time and 10% less of the vote. Those are interesting numbers, even though they'll form the official opposition. So again, we'll see what Andrea Horvath says, eventually in her speech tonight. But there'll be a lot of soul searching for a lot of people, won't there, after tonight's results? Yeah. Go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
Well, the first thing that everybody does is they got to sit down and look at their vote share from the previous election. And every independent riding has to do that. Like, did we gain or did we lose? If you gained, you still had a successful campaign. If you lost, that means you got to change something in your riding association. There's something you need to do better. You need to come up with a better plan. So all the parties, doesn't matter what you are, you need to look at that. And then we do actually need to analyze the fringe parties and the votes that they did get. By my count, I think they've only got a few hundred votes, but are they going to gain on that the next time, being a first-time party, or are they going to lose? And where did those votes come from? So those are all things, analytics, that all the riding associations have to do now. They'll spend the next little while, I'm sure the next little while actually will be spent resting. Their teams will need a break. They've all pounded the pavement. They've been putting out signs. They've been taking phone calls, all that stuff. So they'll all need a break. But after that, the hard work begins for the next 4 years of, where did we win? Where did we lose? Take the positives. And let's face it, it's a cool ride. It really is. It's a lot of fun. But it's not something I really want to do more than once. So,
well, I'm going to come back to those first-time parties, or what we've called fringe parties. And again, they don't generally get very much of the vote share, but they can sometimes bring up an issue that then stays in the spotlight, can't they, Chad? And they can bring up something that the other parties can either choose to ignore, maybe at their pair, or they can latch onto and say, I can add that to my repertoire and see if I can get those voters.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's not about simply the votes that go to those parties. It's about the narrative that those parties bring, and a lot of them being single-issue parties, whether it's vaccine mandates or vaccine passports, etc., COVID-19 restrictions more broadly. That can keep those issues in the limelight for much longer, and that may not be something that the incoming government wants to spend too much time on. So we'll see what that dynamic shakes out to be in the months to come.
Again, Ruth, we'll just go some general thoughts here. What we're looking at. Some surprises. I guess not surprises locally. Maybe in the difference in the vote count, but
when we talk about this, I reflected back to my grandfather, who was a progressive conservative member for 32 years. Now imagine running against him year after year, or election after some time ago, obviously, but he served as both a provincial and federal. But I think anyone running against him must feel much the same as anyone running against a conservative here in this riding.
That's when I saw Karen Gaventer's name on the sign again, I good for her.
Yeah.
She's done this before, and she, again, passionate, knowledgeable, all those wonderful things that Karen is. But to your point, right?
When I ran against Bill Murdoch, I didn't really assess it before I got into it, and then what am I doing? But it's a really good experience.
Yeah.
It is a really good experience. And no regrets at all. But I would say, getting back to looking at the parties, the Liberals have a lot of looking at to do, a lot. I mean, they were decimated. Everyone recognized that and blamed it on Kathleen Wynne the last time. They are decimated tonight. No, she's been gone for 4 years.
Yeah.
There's something very wrong.
Well, and wow, for their leader to lose in their own riding, that is really something.
Yeah. We'll see who steps forward, or if anyone does. I don't know.
Well, and you made the point earlier, Chris, that for the parties that weren't successful tonight, the work can start right now, can start tomorrow. But I wonder if, in a Liberal situation, again, because they're sort of a rudderless ship at the moment with Del Duca not earning his seat, do they need to maybe take a bit more of a measured approach to coming back? Step back, take some time to think about it, and see where they go. Like I don't imagine any of us kind of know who would be leader in waiting for them. Because I mean, even if Del Duca had have been elected and was the official opposition, he was going to probably still be the guy in the next election. So this is quite a shocker, Chad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Chris mentioned, like the work can start tomorrow, tonight. The interesting thing with a majority for those parties that did lose is that there are 4 years to figure it out.
Yeah.
So there is time to do things right, and whether it is finding new leaders, replacing leaders, that all those conversations, there is some time before it really gets into crunch time to have those people in place to lead yourself into the next election or lead the party into the next election.
Yeah. John Fraser was elected again, and he's been the in-house leader of the Liberal Party, but I don't think 4 years. They better react faster than 4 years. Is what.
Well, and I wonder if this is a situation where maybe it's John Fraser, maybe it's somebody that is elected as that. You know, they put out that call. We want to put an interim leader in place fairly quickly. That, you know, you've heard it before, that has no aspirations of eventually being the leader, but just a steady person there to kind of guide the ship while they figure it out. And again, the NDP has its own questions. Liberals, like, think of that strategy, Chris, is as far as like interim leaders and things like that, or go ahead with your other comment.
Well, I do find it interesting, Andrea Hovarth, we can't hear her obviously, but she was crying.
Yeah.
That leads me to wonder if there is something going on there. Like, I don't know what she said, but I did see tears. It does look like they're doing a little bit of celebrating. Yeah. But I do think, like, when I say that hard work begins tomorrow, the hard work right now is the questions to be asked and what direction we want to take. It's not essentially, like, it's not right away your leader. Yeah. You're going to want to mold that into your leader, though. So, yeah, that is where the work begins tonight. You got to figure this out. There's a...
Step down.
Yeah.
The
NDP leader steps down, folks. We do say that's what I was looking on my phone for that. I wasn't ignoring Chris or being be disrespectful. We're all looking for that, but it does say... Chad saw that on, again, we got multiple screens up to try and get you the best information, and it does say that Andrea Horvath has stepped down as leader of the NDP. Sorry, Chris, keep going.
It will be interesting with the Liberals. Like we've talked about, this is an epic failure for them here. It's something that I didn't see, and that question of, is it the federal? Is it Trudeau? Is it like, what is it that's making people turn away from them, especially when it was only 4 short years ago that they were empowered. They were the government. They did get lots of votes. So what has gone so horribly wrong that the Liberals are down to this? Like,
and with only 8 seats in the legislature, there's an awfully good chance their next leader is going to come from outside of that legislature. Right, like that's, again, without drilling down on who it is that's reelected and such, like, you know, maybe it's that fresh start, or, you know, or whatever, right? Or if a by-election comes up, do you have another candidate to run in there? But it might take somebody from outside of the legislature to re-energize this party.
Yeah, well, and potentially you look to the federal Liberal Party. There's a pretty big bench up in Ottawa right now for the Liberal Party. Is there a star that might consider running for the provincial Liberals and leading the party out of the current rut they're in, to really kind of this is the Liberal Party of Ontario that governed for you know, a lengthy period of time. So it's shocking to see kind of 2 elections in a row with around the tens of seats, or lower than 10 seats. It's really, really interesting to see. So maybe you do need that federal firepower for somebody with a bit of a brand already to come in.
Well, depends on how people feel about the federal party. That may be more of an albatross.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to be very careful, wouldn't you, Ruth, on that for sure.
Who you pick.
Yeah. And so we talked even before we went on air how these leaders and candidates would have a couple of different speeches prepared. Again, Stephen Del Duca will address I don't think he had this speech prepared. So if his speechwriter, you know, or himself or whatever, he would not have had this speech prepared.
No.
This is really something I think that is taking all of us sort of by, again, we did it not forming the government, sure, he'd be prepared for that, but losing his own seat, I don't think would have been prepared for that. That is really something.
Yeah, or not even cracking the 10-seat mark.
Yeah.
I think that's a
so
failure.
bad. So bad.
And David, we'll come back to you and see what else is going on. We do have news that Andrea Horwath has stepped down as the leader of the NDP, so that's a big development, but not a surprising development based on what the results were. But David, maybe, again, your thoughts on that you can weigh into, or other stuff that you're seeing throughout the province?
Well, we're just seeing Stephen Del Duca speak to his in his own riding, which he did not win. And you're quite right. We may be looking at the cusp of a sea change in Ontario politics. Some of the ridings that we have been following, the PCs have moved out into the lead in Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte, currently leading by almost 400 votes. And that seems to be less of a horse race than it was early on. But there are still some interesting ridings that are there. We're still waiting on three ridings yet from Algoma-Manitoulin is one, and there's we're still waiting on Flamborough-Glanbrook, but the odds are pretty good that will be possibly a Conservative win. But I think if you look at what's really interesting is who won, who lost. And this is something the panel might wish to consider, or even tomorrow morning, I'm sure it'll be a conversation over coffee. The NDP took a huge hit, and they lost seats. And in losing their seats, they lost 9 seats. The Conservatives picked up 7. The Liberals picked up 1. The Greens didn't change. But the point is that what the New Democrats lost largely went to the Conservatives. So that may have played into the decision by Andrea Horwath to resign as leader. We still see. It looks like from what I can see here, all of the cabinet, with the exception of Doug Downey, who is still in that horse race in Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte, is all of the cabinet was reelected. There's no empty spaces on the cabinet bench, that's for sure. And we'll have to keep an eye on it. But as we move towards the close of our evening, that's something that will probably be tomorrow morning's coffee. Michael, if I can comment on one of the things that one of the panelists said earlier about what the future might hold, I think you're bang on. It's time to go to the bench for both the NDP and for the Liberals. There's got to be somebody out there who will be willing to take the leadership and see what can be done in the next 4 years. Both parties will probably be entering a bit of a rebuilding phase to see what might be done. But at this point, it looks like Doug Ford is set for another 4 years, and hey, that means we're going to be back here 4 years from now, maybe, if my hair hasn't gone totally gray. We'll just wait and see. So, Michael, I'll throw it back to you, and all yours.
Yeah, and you mentioned the gray. I was thinking I should have maybe combed the gray out of my beard, but hey, you know what? We don't need to hide from who we are, David. It's just the way it goes. So it's interesting information when we talked about the analytics and you break down the numbers. The Liberals are sitting at 8 seats. Their leader loses, yet they still gained a seat and gained 4.2% of the popular vote. That doesn't necessarily speak to success. It speaks to how decimated they were 4 years ago, Ruth. So that isn't enough really to leave this positively, is it?
No.
No, okay.
No.
So
if they thought for a minute that way,
yeah,
we would be sitting here in 4 years looking at 8 seats for the Liberals.
Yeah.
No, it's time for a sea change here.
And Chris, you mentioned as David was going over those results, or you picked up on, 7 seats went from NDP to the opposite side of the political spectrum, to the Conservatives. You would think that
Del Duca has resigned.
You would think that those seats would go Liberal, just as, move more to the center. And as I say that to you, David Shearman, who's always on top of things, Del Duca has resigned. I don't think he had a choice. That won't surprise anybody really, losing his seat. But yeah, that's quite shocking, isn't it, Chris, that you go from NDP, flip all the way over the middle of the spectrum and go right to the Conservatives?
Well, there's one obviously went Liberal. which that,
Yes, right.
like we said, that's not a shock. That's an easy shift. But to go from NDP and far left to Conservative and to the right is a huge swing in the way that those ridings are viewing their candidates and viewing the way Ontario is being run. Like, it is shocking to me. Like, I'm sitting here and I can't believe it. And it's just because of the swing. It's not, the Conservatives obviously have spoken. People have spoken. They like a Conservative government. But that swing is shocking of those seats. Like, very, very opposite.
And again, there's drilling down to do on it that we can't do in the moment, but is it one of those we want what those ridings have or something? I don't know. You know, they figure the Conservatives are going to win, we better get on that train. Who knows what these voters are thinking? There'll be lots of polling and such that goes on after these results are posted.
Yes.
So one thing we'll be looking for, Chad, as we go forward is voter turnout. Of course, we don't have those numbers here, but you know, how does that affect an election, that voter turnout that we talked about early? And you know, is there anything you're expecting to see tomorrow when we get some of those numbers?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And if there is an increased voter turnout, you wonder where those votes were allocated, and you can reasonably make some assumptions that the PCs picked up voters who did not vote before, which is really quite a fascinating thesis to kind of drill down into in the months that come after the election. It'll be really, really fascinating to dig into that. And I think, you know, when we think, going back to the question to Chris, some of those questions are around how do we go from an NDP riding to switching over to Conservative, and you know, some of that can actually, maybe it isn't even anything the PCs did, but something that the Liberals or NDP did not do, which is, again, establish themselves as that clear leader to defeat the current government. So if the vote was evenly split amongst the Liberals and NDP, the Conservatives just slide up there with their base of support, and that becomes enough in those ridings if it's so evenly distributed. So
one name that you and I talked about was Gilles Bisson, who's Timmins James Bay. He is a long-standing, he's been in for at least 22 years. I'm not remembering exactly. Actually, it would have been 99 when he was elected, so close to 23 years. And NDP and Timmins James Bay, and that riding went Conservative in a big way. The numbers were well over 50% for, I think, close to 60% for that winning candidate.
Yeah. There must be an awful lot of credibility that the Conservative Party has with people who you would think would be the last to support them. And they must really believe the message that Doug Ford brought to them. Yeah. It's perplexing.
Yeah. And of course, a majority Conservative government is not surprising after this election. That was polled, that's what it was said, but to this degree is what is. So we should make that clear. You know, when we're talking here, it's not that we're totally surprised of the overall election result, but just the numbers and the overwhelming win in many ridings and in the province for the Conservatives.
We've witnessed two leaders stepping down of other parties. Everybody is surprised, I think.
Yeah. And rarely do two leaders lose, in a sense.
Exactly, exactly. This is quite a unique phenomenon we're watching tonight.
Yeah, because both Del Duca and Horvath could have not formed the majority government or even a minority government lead, but kept their jobs, right? They could have rationalized a win in many other ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which leads to the question: where do they find their leaders from?
Yeah.
Where do they go from here? Those are the NDP. The NDP could go the same route Chad said of the Liberals, find a star that's an MP, somebody who's a star that could maybe step down and run federally, or do they go to somebody like a Toronto City Council like Mike Layton, who's a very strong member of the party and a very popular member of the party? Personally, I'm calling it here now. I'm predicting Mike Layton will be the NDP candidate 4 years from now.
Go ahead, Drew, sorry.
I predict you.
There we go.
No.
And Chad, you're going to have to lead the Liberals.
I don't know about that. They might not have me.
That would be an interesting show to do right here on Chad's decision to run for the Liberals. But again, you know, on that, we do again congratulate everybody that put their name forward for this election. Whether you do that municipally, federal, school board trustees, whatever it is, provincially, it is a big undertaking, and it does consume your whole life for more than the month or 5 weeks that the election takes place. So it will be interesting to see. So you're saying Mike Layton. So we've got that on tape. I don't know where these tapes go, but we'll dig that up in 4 years and see if you're Nostradamus and
see if I'm right.
Yeah, see if you're right. But it will be really interesting, right? Again, do they go that interim leader route and find a seat for somebody like that to run in to try and win a by-election or something like that to get into the party? Who knows? And you said a majority government, these parties have 4 years to figure out how the Conservatives grabbed the votes in the way they did in this election and how they can build themselves back up. Yeah, really interesting stuff coming out of the results tonight. So you can see it on your screen, folks. 83 seats where the Conservatives are leading or elected, 29 for the NDP, 8 Liberals, Green 1. Again, I think the Green would have liked to gain 1 or 2 more seats. So we'll see.
Well, let's hope they gain 1 and get to an even 3,000.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, right? So, but, you know, Mike Schreiner will have more to say over the next few days, too, for the Green Party and the one independent that David has talked about. So, David, we'll go back over to you and hear what you're hearing as leaders and other people make their declarations and what else is going on throughout the province.
Well, just so you know, Michael Harris was reelected.
Okay, well, that's a pet riding there for me.
I thought you would appreciate that comment. But what is really interesting, actually Colin DeMello of Global News points out that the Liberal vote was horrifically inefficient, because the popular vote that the Liberals, they were almost identical, 23.5 for the NDP, 23.6 for the Liberals, but there's a 20-seat difference between the two. So that's probably something that the tall foreheads in the parties will be looking at very carefully and saying, okay, how do we make the vote more efficient? Where do we need to be working? So that may also have played into Stephen Del Duca's departure or choosing to depart. There's a lot. This is an unusual night because it's highly unusual to see 2 party leaders step down at the same night. In fact, I can't remember when that happened in Ontario politics or even federal politics. So, hey, we live in interesting times, as the old proverb goes. So, it's always a pleasure to be here. We've got about a minute left, and I just wanted to express my appreciation to our panelists. I've been eavesdropping on them all night, and it's been really interesting to hear their conversations, but also to you. If you're watching tonight, thank you for being a part of our coverage here for Rogers TV Grey County, Ontario Election 2022. Thank you, friends. We'll talk again.
you.